you so much for tuning in to another episode of Untherapeutic. I'm super excited today because this is an important topic. I see this come up all the time in counseling. I can't tell you how many people reach out, and even if they don't call it burnout, they're experiencing some type of symptoms related to burnout. And so today we have Dr. Sana, who has a phenomenal story, who's an expert in this space. She's going to tell you a little bit more, and we're going to dive in. So if you've ever experienced burnout, or if this is an area that you're kind of on the fence, like, am I working too hard? Am I not? You want to make sure you listen to this episode in its entirety. But before we dive in, Dr. Sana, just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and how you even got into this space.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Hardy, for having me. It's a pleasure. So I'm Dr. Sana Chaudhry. I am a board certified internal medicine physician, now turned mindset and manifestation coach.
Mhm.
So I got into this the hard way, really, through my own burnout. I was been a working hospitalist for over 6 years, and again, showing up for everyone else's family. But in all of that, I felt like I was quietly losing myself. Right. So for
Mhm.
me, the pivot, the breaking point was really when my toddler got sick, and this happened
Mhm.
about 3 years ago. I rushed her to urgent care. She's throwing up every 10
Mhm.
minutes or so, right? And that was the day I was supposed to be working. So I take her to urgent care there, and she's getting IV fluids, medications, things like that. And it's just breaking my heart, right? Because this is my entire world, right? And while I'm
Mhm.
getting pages from the hospital, so like, I mean, it was a very stressful moment. Well, long story short, when she was stabilized, I had to call my mom. I dropped her off at home. I left her with my mom when I all I wanted to do was just hold her and be present for her, right?
Mhm.
And then I still had to go work my shift. And that
Wow.
same day, I started getting sick myself. And the next day, now I'm full blown sick, throwing up. So I call into work. And what I was told was that I would have to make up that shift, which
Mhm.
I did the next day. Well, this all happened on a Friday. I made up that shift Saturday. And that Monday, I put in my resignation and I have never
Wow.
looked back. So burnout for me is very personal. And this was the breaking point, but it had kind of been building a lot.
Mhm.
Smaller things have been happening before. I realized that I just wasn't feeling as fulfilled. I was quietly losing myself, and I just wasn't able to dream the way that I was before. So that was a big one for me. And I
Yeah.
was
Say a little bit more about that, not able to dream as you did before. Like, when do you think you started to notice that shift? I mean, obviously, you have this
Mhm,
this tipping point, with your
mhm,
daughter, but as you
mhm.
said, even before then there were signs. Tell me a little bit about some of those signs, and when did you, start to, I don't say lose yourself, but when did that
Mhm.
happen?
I think it's safe to say yourself a little too, but I think the minor signs that I would say was just feeling tired all the time, right? Like there was just
Mm.
constant fatigue that just wouldn't go away. Even so, the shifts that I was working for a very long time, it was 7 on, 7 off. So I was working 7 days in a row, then would be off 7 days, which I know to a typical person, like listening to this, it may sound, oh my gosh, you're off 7 days. That's great.
You get a whole week off.
You get a
Yeah.
whole week off, but when you're working that week, you have no time for yourself or
Mhm.
life or your finances, your kids, groceries, nothing, right? So those 7 days,
Mhm.
really, you're just kind of coming back to yourself. So it was really just feeling that tiredness that just wouldn't go away with the rest, right? And just feeling
Mhm.
unfulfilled and dreading going to work. I remember just sitting in my car, Monday mornings, just saying, "Oh, here we go again." Like, so that was like a
Mhm.
big thing for me because medicine is something and still is something I'm very passionate about. I love it. I enjoy it so much. But how did I get to this point where I'm now feeling like, oh, here we go, another shift, right? Like
Mhm. Mhm.
there's very, very much a disconnect there. So that was something that, I started paying attention to. And then again, just being snappy and short with my kids. Again,
Mhm.
she's my entire world. At that time, I only had her. So I'm like, well, why am I snapping? And again, toddlers will be toddlers, but
Yeah,
your
they
emotions
they're gonna test you.
they're going to test you, but at the same time, just that ability to even be able to regulate yourself, to be present for your child the way they need you, because you're a child, right? So
Mhm.
they are not going to show up the same way as an adult does. But I hadn't that emotional capacity just wasn't there anymore. So that's when I
Mhm.
started asking myself these questions. And when again this tip of the iceberg moment happened, or that I guess breaking point happened for me, that's when I was like, well, like let me reevaluate my life entirely. Like what is
Mhm.
going on here that you know I I can't be present for the people that matter the most to me, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of that was the breaking point, but the smaller signs were mostly
Or
those that were happening
do
before.
during that time, do you think it was, you working too much, or the environment that you were working in, or the work itself? Because I know for someone who is maybe experiencing all three, it can be hard to determine, like, okay, am I just overextending myself, or, I'm questioning what I'm doing altogether?
I think it was more just the work environment and just the
Mm,
time, right? There's the time commitment that it was taking from me, the number of hours that I was putting in, and not, and all of that kind of led to the third, which is again questioning what you're doing entirely, right? Which again, for me, it wasn't questioning medicine or being a physician because I thoroughly enjoyed that and I still do. But it was more, hey, is this the right space for me to be practicing medicine, or should I
mm,
think about perhaps having my own practice, which is what I do now, and
mm.
trying to work on my own terms, right? Which again,
Yeah.
if anyone listening is in the healthcare space, the system in general, quote unquote, makes it so hard for you to break free and try to do something
Mhm.
on your own. And that's a whole other topic. But
Yeah.
in general, yeah, like it was really more the first two. And then that kind of led me to question, am I practicing medicine the way that I want to for me to fully feel fulfilled and also for me to give back the way I want to, not just to my
Mm.
patients and community, but show up as the best physician, mom, and just human being that I can be. Right. So
Yeah.
it was really more that.
Absolutely. What gave you the confidence? Because I know some people probably have that pull, that kind of tug, like, hey, you need to do something different, whether it's start your own business, whether it's, explore a different career, but for different reasons, they remain in the same position. How did
Yeah.
you, like, because you said, hey, I put my resignation in on Monday, like that,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you didn't phone a friend. I mean, it's like, this is pretty decisive. What contribute to you being able to take that leap?
I'll be honest with you. So I think it's twofold. I've always been a very, gutsy person, and I don't want to say a little bit of a rule breaker, but I
Mm,
listen. Like if I really feel strongly about something, I'll do it. And if even if that means I'm a little bit of a risk taker, but not in an irresponsible way. I'm a risk
mhm,
taker in a calculated way, right? So some of that came from just my personality, and the second, my husband, to be honest with you, he's my rock. He has just been so supportive through everything. And he's a physician himself. So he understands these issues firsthand. So when all of
mm,
this happened, he obviously saw it unfold in real time. And then we sat down and had a discussion. He's like, are you happy in the current role? Right. Like not just being a doctor, but
mm,
like, are you happy in this current position you have? I'm like, no, like absolutely not. Like I don't like the
mm.
hours. I don't like the admin. I don't enjoy even doing what I'm doing right now.
Yeah,
The answer became very clear, right? So we're like, okay,
yeah,
like we'll figure it out. And in medicine, again, so many of us, working mamas that are physicians and nurse practitioners, nurses, we kind of, what I like to call the golden handcuffs, right? Because your salary looks
mm,
great on paper, right? But you have student loans, so you can't quit even if you wanted to, right? But,
mm, mhm.
thankfully I had a little bit of a nest egg that I'm like, okay, well, I can take a few months off to figure it out, what my next steps are going to be. And in the meantime, again, I thankfully had my husband to have my back on that. But it was really more those two, just again,
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense.
by
Yeah.
nature, and then having my husband's support.
What about for someone? How do you encourage or advise someone, say they can't step away from their job completely, but they
Mhm.
still need to step away and just kind of reconnect with themselves? I know a lot of your work is on the nervous system, so I would love to kind of talk about just how that even factors into, our ability to be bold. But how can you
Mhm.
take like these micro breaks? I just made that up, but you know what I mean? Just ways for you to reconnect with yourself so you can be more in tune with what is my next step.
So that's a great question. So it's again twofold. So the first thing that comes to mind to answer that question would be sometimes it becomes hard to even know when to do that. And especially if your nervous system has been in survival mode for so long, right? So for
Mhm,
so many of us, that becomes difficult to even recognize, like, hey, when do I step back, right? So that's again when, but I think again, the way you can recognize is if your body's feeling off, right? Like those signs will be
mhm,
there. Your body will tell you before your mind even does. Again, if you're feeling
mhm.
tired and you're resting and you're still not feeling recovered, right? Or you're waking up exhausted, or you're going on vacation to try to fill your cup, but you come back feeling just as empty, right? And or you're
Yeah,
losing interest in things that used to bring you joy. All of those are signs, even if you're not able to kind of decipher, right? But hopefully listening to this podcast or just even reading about burnout, educating yourself will make you again kind of pause and say, hey, this is happening to me. Am I burnt out? Right. So that question is the
mm,
first place to start. And to answer your other question, if you're not able to really say, like I did, just step back and cut back on your hours because you have financial obligations, which is true for so many of us, what I would suggest and what I tell my clients as well is really seriously start thinking about boundaries, right? And so having
mm,
boundaries with work is essential, right? Like, am I going to chart after hours, right? For example, or if, a lot of times again in the healthcare field, like so many of us will keep getting pages even, after hours, right? Or the charting just seems to never end. So start putting those gentle boundaries with work, but also yourself, right? If you
Mhm.
have, say, like 10 notes to finish still, and it's now 7:30 p.m. and you're home and you want to be with your kids, that's maybe a gentle boundary you can set with yourself, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to touch my charting until, let me maybe wake up 30 minutes earlier tomorrow when my kids are still sleeping to do it. But right now, it's time for me to be present fully with my kids, right? So
Yeah.
then I would, in that situation, say, start thinking about boundaries that are practical, but
Mm.
work for you, that make you feel, again, less exhausted, less tired, less just empty and drained.
Yeah.
So to answer both of those questions together would be, if I could just put it all in one sentence, would be listen to your body.
Listen to your
Listen
body.
to,
Yeah.
listen to your body. Yeah.
That's so important. You were talking about your husband and you guys being able to come together and sit down. What advice would you give to, say, I'm watching my wife overextend herself, okay, but I don't want to come off as unsupportive. I don't want to say, hey, you're coming home angry, you're taking it out on the family. How do you navigate having that conversation without, you know, appearing as though you're not concerned about her career or professional ambition? And it can go either way, man or woman. Just
Yeah, and that's a great question. So I think first again would just be recognizing and just seeing like, hey, something feels off. Like, hopefully you know your
Mhm,
spouse or your partner for long enough that you know what their quote unquote normal looks like.
mhm,
So when you recognize, hey, something just isn't right, right? So first just recognize that. And second would be, don't try to fix it, right? Because burnout,
mhm,
again, it's not a logic problem. Like, no one is feeling burnt out intentionally, right? It's a felt experience, and it's a nervous system problem that's going on in your spouse, which they may or
mhm,
may not even recognize. So they
mhm.
don't necessarily need solutions right away. What they need is just your support and for them to just feel seen, right? So I would start by just saying like, hey, I see how hard you're working. How can I make things a little bit easier for you? Right. And then actually
Mhm.
really listen to what they say
Yeah.
and try to just step in and actually practically just do, right? Like, literally just take things off their plate without being asked, as you would in any situation. But burnout, I would say a little bit more so. And try to create a space for them to rest and take a break without feeling guilty, right? Not to say that you would
Mhm.
make them feel guilty, but just be extra cognizant of that. So just give them that space to rest and just gently, lovingly encourage, professional support. If you think they need to talk to a therapist, right? Or if you think they need maybe a
Mm.
coach to help them get through this burnout piece, maybe bring that up in a gentle way. But I would first start with recognizing, and second, don't try to fix it. Just show up and start taking things off their plate.
Yeah, that's so tough. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with, I'll just pick on men, because our first go-to is to fix it. It's like, well, if you don't like it, then just quit. Or, well,
Absolutely.
like, what can we do? Because, there's a part of you too that if someone is coming to you and they're saying, oh, I'm tired, but they're not doing anything to address it,
Hmm.
then it's hard to be supportive because it's like, okay, I want to listen, I actually want to help, but if you're not taking any of the advice that I'm giving or offering or, receiving the support, then you're almost tying my hands behind my back.
Yeah.
And then I just become like a graveyard that you just kind of dump all
Hmm.
your problems on, and all the thing, then I got to
Hmm.
be the recipient of your attitude, and again it becomes this dicey situation.
Right.
When I think about like the burnout, another thing that comes to mind too is we have to work hard. I mean, obviously
Hmm.
you're a physician, that's no overnight feat.
Hmm.
Where do you draw that line between overextending yourself and just being competitive in today's market?
So again, I would say, paying attention to what your body's telling you, right? If you're
Mm.
feeling like you're working hard is one thing, right? You're going to be working hard in, any competitive field that you're in. But if
Mhm.
you start to feel like you're losing yourself, and what I mean by that is like, if you no longer are interested in things that used to bring you joy, or if you're snapping at your loved ones, or you're coming home and all you want to do is lay on the couch and just doom scroll, or
Mhm.
you want to just, binge eat, or you feel like you're hanging out with people, but you're not really there. Or like, this
Yeah.
happens a lot with family, right? So you're present with your kids, but physically, but mentally you're checked out, right? So once again, start paying attention to those things. That's again your body trying to give you signs. Your body will
Mm.
tell you, it'll kind of silently whisper before it screams, right? So pay attention to those whispers before your
Mm.
body starts screaming or before it shuts down, right? So pay
Yeah.
attention to those signs. Your body will tell you. So that's the biggest thing. And I would say, and that's the biggest differentiator again with just, between being tired and also being burnt out. Like with tired, you're going to feel better when you rest. You're going to feel better when you take a day off, or you'll likely feel better when you come back from a vacation. You'll feel like my cup is full. But burnout, none of that. Like that's not, you're not going to experience that, right?
Yeah.
So again, it all comes down to just paying attention to what your body's trying to tell you.
Yeah. I love that when you said your body will whisper before it screams. That's so good. And I think for a lot of people, they've been in this chaotic state for so long that it is difficult for them to kind of reconnect. You talk a lot about just like your nervous system. Like, share a little bit more about that. How do you reset?
Absolutely. And I do want to just say one thing too about the body and the mind that we were talking about. So the
Mhm.
thing with that again too is that the signs are there, right? Like you'll often notice, like, I just feel off. Like, well, why am I so
Mhm.
tired all the time? But again, and I'm going to use healthcare for this example. Like we are just trained again in
Yeah.
healthcare to just override our bodies. Like in residency, you're working 80 plus hour shifts and it's normalized. It's almost praised. Like, oh man, I
Mhm.
work
Oh,
so
it's a
hard.
badge of honor. Yeah.
It's a badge of honor. Like I worked 100-hour week, man. Like, oh my gosh, you did no way. Like looking back at it now, and I was there, we all did this, right? To me, that's no longer a badge of honor, right? Like, but
Mhm.
again, healthcare system being what it is, and for it to be what it has to be, you're trained to override your own body, right? You got to run
Mm.
a code. If someone's crashing, you can't be paying attention to your own body. You have to go save a life,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's not what you paid for. Like, we worry about you
Exactly.
later.
100%. And but what that does is that you as the provider are learning to override your own body. And then over
Mm.
months and years of doing that, you don't know where that distinction is anymore. Your body just
Mhm.
doesn't know. So when you feel stressed or your emotions are high and you're feeling those feelings of burnout, to you that's just normal. That's just how you
Mhm.
live, right?
Mhm.
But that's not the way we were designed to live. And that's exactly
Yeah.
why, your brain will just get you stuck in that loop where you're just
Mhm.
going through the motions and you're just living day to day and you're not really dreaming, or you're not really, thinking about what your ideal life or your future may look like. Right.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that was one piece of it. And I'm sorry, say your second
No, no, the other one was just like, if someone were to say, "You know what? This is me. What can I do to reset that nervous system? Like, how can I help recalibrate in a way that I do have a more healthy norm?"
Absolutely. So that's a great question, right? So yeah, so when you recognize, hey, like these signs are there, what do I do? So again, recognizing is the first step, right? And resetting
Mhm.
your nervous system, I know that sounds like okay, reset, like is there a reset button? No, there's no reset
Yeah.
button. But what it means
Just hit the
is
red reset button. That's what they always
that
say when
wouldn't
you
that be
call
great,
customer
right?
service.
Exactly. So that's really just teaching your body to feel safe again, right? So not through overthinking, but through the body itself again, right? Like that's why I'm a huge fan of somatic work that we do, and also the
Mhm.
practices that work, right? So somatic movement. What I mean by that is, believe it or not, just shaking, like just getting up,
Yeah.
dancing, putting on a song that you enjoy, and just dance for a few minutes, right? Once that
Mhm.
song is
Mhm.
over, ask yourself, like, how do I feel? I bet you anything, you're going to feel better. You're going to feel calmer and happier, right? So,
Mhm.
somatic movement, which is again shaking, walking, dancing, anything like that, what that does is it's discharging stored stress hormones from your body, right? Your
Mhm.
nervous system, it loves movement, it loves
Mhm.
shaking, it loves any kind of movement to discharge those stress hormones, right? So, that's one. And that kind of really goes hand in hand with my favorite one, which is aerobic movement. And what I
Mhm.
recommend to all my clients is doing this every other day, at least 20 minutes, ideally. And this is the most underrated one, right? Because this, again, is going hand in hand with the somatic movement that we talked about. Get your heart rate up. It literally is metabolizing your cortisol, your adrenaline, your stress hormones, and it's
Mhm.
biological completion of your stress response, right? So that
Mhm.
one is absolutely my favorite one. The other things that work, which again, a lot of people talk about breath work. Breath work is great and it does work, and specifically longer exhales than inhales. What that
Mhm.
does is it activates your parasympathetic system, starting to calm your body down, right? Another
Mhm.
one is just grounding yourself. So what I mean by that is just getting yourself back to the present moment, in the present, in the now. And one of my favorite ones for this is a five senses exercise. So
Mhm.
you name five things around you. And I love to do this if you're outside in the nature, it works best
Mhm.
for that. So name five things that you can see, four things that you can feel, three things that you can hear, two things that you can, one thing that you can taste, all your
Mhm.
senses, right? Just go.
Yeah, all the
But the way to do it is you really just be present in the moment. So, for example, the five things that you can see, don't just say, like, oh, I see a tree. Really focus and pay attention to that tree. Look at the tree, appreciate the colors of that tree, appreciate the branches. Really focus on that tree, take your time with it. And if you're doing this, if you combine this in nature, the frequency of nature is just so healing for our bodies,
Yeah,
ourselves, right? Everything
it
is energy,
is.
everything is frequency. We are energy. So our
Mhm.
energy and the energy of nature, it's very much aligned and it's very healing for us. So if you do the five senses out in nature, you're instantly going to feel better, right?
Yeah.
So those are some of my favorite ones. But yeah, to come back, really, I
Yeah,
would
and
say,
that's good. I really appreciate that because regardless of kind of what is on your plate, like
Mhm,
we can all do these things. I think that the challenge is obviously the consistency piece, but I think once you kind of get into a good habit and a routine, it makes doing this a lot easier. You
mhm.
don't have to go out and buy anything. Like this is everything you mentioned, we have access to. Because I was thinking, one of the things I hear a lot is, we focus a lot on work, but I do know a lot of people say, well, everything I have on my plate, I can't take off. And so whether that's my family,
Mhm,
work, like the thing that's causing the burnout are the things that I love, but
mhm,
things that aren't as easy to just adjust.
mhm,
You have young kids. I have two kids. I mean, the after school activities are crazy now. It's like they're training for the Olympics, 4 or 5 days out of the week. And obviously you got a spouse, he or she has needs. It's just all of these different things that you can't take off your plate.
mhm.
And so it's like, how do you navigate almost things that you can't say no to some extent? You mentioned the boundaries, but if you were to elaborate on that, because obviously you have a family, entrepreneur, I mean, multiple things that you're involved in. Where have you found success?
So for me personally, it's really just being comfortable with letting go a little bit and being
Mhm,
okay accepting help, right? And this was
mhm,
something that I personally also struggled with in the beginning, because to me I was like, well, no one can do this the way I do it, and it's just
mhm,
not going to be right if somebody else does it. But I've learned over the years that the more we try to hold on to our tasks, our daily, little small things that need to get done, right? Like 80% done is better than 100% not done, right? And start
mhm.
being okay with that. Start being okay with things being almost perfect, right? It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
perfect, right? So again, you're just teaching yourself and your nervous system to start small, start, feeling safe again. And just letting go a little bit, right? So again,
Uh,
if your spouse can grab you a coffee, or if your colleague can take a small task off your hands, or if you can afford it, get hired help, right? That's something we
yeah.
end up doing personally, just have hired help for certain things around the house. And it was a game changer, and I haven't looked
Mhm.
back, and I will not. And again, in the beginning, it was a little hard. I'm like, "Ooh, that's not how I do it. Like,
There's
that's
a
not."
little bit of guilt sometimes, especially depending on how you were raised. It's like, no, this is something I should be doing, whether that's a mom, a wife, or whatever, but it's like, no,
Yep.
no, I can't
And
do
that
everything.
guilt too, you bring up such a great point, right? That guilt is a paradigm, right? Like I like to call
Mhm,
it. It's a subconscious belief that we have. It's not the truth, right? But that
mhm,
guilt, these things, this need to like hold on and do everything yourself, it's costing you your health, right? It's costing you your nervous system, really, and just feeling
mhm.
calm and safe, right? So just letting people do for you, whether that's people around you and it's your family members, and it's just they're doing it for free basically, or whether it's help that you're paying, but you're getting
Yeah.
this stuff taken off your plate and it's still getting done.
Mm.
That's, start being okay with that, right? And again, that's like anything else, it's going to take some practice, but you'll get there, right? It's like any other skill. And now again, for me, for instance, with the things that our hired help does for it, I'm so grateful for. And
Yeah.
I would never look back, right? To
Yeah.
me, it's like, well, it's getting done, and that's great, because my time and my energy, again, it all comes back to energy, is so much more valuable to me in this aspect of my life than this aspect of my life, right?
Yeah.
So
For people who are struggling with like letting someone help them? You mentioned the 80% done, you know, what other advice would you have to someone who struggles with kind of letting go?
I would say start asking yourself why that is, right? Most
Right.
likely it's going to stem from some belief that you have had since, probably since you were a child, right? Maybe it's an
Mhm.
environment that you grew up in where it wasn't okay to have other people do things for you, or, you were maybe taught that if you can do it yourself, why pay somebody else to do it, right? Like I've heard that
Yeah,
one, right? I used
I
to
hear
believe
that
that.
too.
Mhm. Right? But think about it this way, like if you make $100 and you pay somebody 80, like, and you say get to save that time, you still have 20 left at the end, but you got that job done too, right? So really
Mhm,
you're thinking
mhm,
it the way I like to think about it. I don't know if you've read that book, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, but
mhm.
think about it like that too. You're really buying back your time. And with your time, you're buying back your energy, right?
Yeah,
And what can you do with that energy that you will not be able to do if you yourself was trying to do everything and probably not finishing everything in the first place, right?
mm,
So but to answer your question, it really is probably stemming from a paradigm, a subconscious belief you've had since you were a child. And in that case, that it would have to take some deeper digging into your subconscious to really figure out what are those beliefs that are, because all of us have those paradigms, those subconscious beliefs that are running our day to day. Every action that
mm,
we do, everything that we say is stemming from the software programming that we've had since we were
mm,
kids, and those actions, those words that we speak is what creates our results, right? So thoughts and then feelings, and then your feelings create your actions then give you your results. So if your results are not what you want them to be, you likely have to go back to what your thoughts are. Like, what are my
mm,
thoughts? What are my beliefs? And start thinking about that. And that's something where, it may or may not be easy to do if you've never thought about these things before. If you're someone who's into personal development or who's read about things like this, you may already be mulling these things over. But
mm.
if not, this is where working with someone can be really beneficial, where you really just sit down and you talk and you figure out what are these subconscious beliefs, and we all
Yeah,
have that are running everything I'm doing currently in my life, giving me the results that I may not be happy with. And how can I
mm,
rewire these beliefs to get the results that I want? And the great thing
yeah.
about rewiring is that we now know, and we used to, some time ago think that our brain was not malleable, that by the time you're an adult, like, hey, that's the brain you have.
Just
Once
how
you've
you
learned,
are, that's just yeah, you just signed the
that's
contract
how
and
you are is how
forever,
you are. 100%. And now, thankfully, we know that that's not true. Your brain
thankfully.
is plastic. Thankfully, it's malleable like your entire life, right? Like you can learn new skills. You can, neuroplasticity, right? Like you can figure out
Mhm,
new things, learn new skills, rewire your brain, form new neuronal connections, and literally create the life that you want to create. And we
mhm.
have the power to do that. But it all starts with recognizing and
Yeah,
also a desire, right? Like you have to have a desire
mm.
to change. So I know that was a long-winded
Yeah,
answer.
no, no, that's great. That's great. There's so much good information packed into that. Dr. San, I know you have your hands in a lot of different things. Where can people find you online? And if someone wanted to work with you personally, how do they go about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my Instagram, that's the only social media platform I'm currently active on. It's at dr.senna, which is my first name _C. And I'm quite active on there. That's where I share the most, I post the most, and I show up. And I also
Mm,
connect with my audience the most. And I do have a program that I just recently launched. It's called the Aligned MD, where I work with clients one on one, also in a group capacity. I also have a self paced program, just depending on what different people need.
mm,
And that information is also on my Instagram. So,
okay.
and in that, again, I know we're touching on a lot of things, but we kind of, the way I do it is we work through all of it. We start with the nervous system regulation piece, because to me
Mm,
that's foundational. You're not
yes.
going to be able to manifest or build on a broken, fried nervous system. That's still just the only goal for that nervous system is just to survive and get you through that day. It's
Mm,
not
mhm,
thinking about your ideal life, right? So I always, with all my clients, start with that piece first. Some people need more work there, some people don't, but we start there for everybody. And then from there, we work on, again, the paradigms and the subconscious beliefs that we were just talking about. We
mm,
all have them. And we're all looking to create some kind of change in our life. So figuring those
true.
beliefs out becomes really essential, and then rewiring them. So we work on that. And then the third
Mm,
piece of the program, which to me is the most fun, is the manifestation piece, which to me,
yeah.
I know, a lot of people think that's a woo-woo word. To me, there's really no difference between faith, spirituality, neuroscience, and manifestation. They all go hand
Mhm,
in hand for me very much. And that was another huge moment for me when I realized that that's really the truth. Everything
Mm,
started shifting, right? So
mhm.
that's the third piece we work on. And, you know, in layman's term, what that means is really just raising your frequency to that of the good that you desire, so that there's no there's no question that that good wouldn't come true, right? Because you're basically
Yes.
consciously bringing that into your life. So that's the
Yeah.
third piece that we work on in my program.
I love it. I love it. Please make sure you definitely follow Dr. Sana. And if you have an opportunity, I think it would be great for anyone who's, struggling with burnout or who just wants to see a change in their life. I mean, again, being able to walk with someone throughout this process, in my experience, has always been most beneficial. We say we want change, but then we don't want help to change. And as a result, most of the time we just stay in the same place. So
You said, Dr. Hart,
definitely,
like nothing changes if nothing changes, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Anyone listening, make sure you follow us online. You can also subscribe on any major streaming platform. That's Untherapeutic. Thank you for listening and tune in for the next episode.